everybody, welcome back to our channel. This is a video I've been planning on shooting for months and just hadn't got to it, but I'm here now to talk about the differences between my old firm and my new firm, things I've noticed, my reactions, my first impressions. But before I really get into the video, I want to talk about why I've been kind of absent from the channel. That's been the #1 question we've gotten on Instagram and everything, or like people that we've been able to meet. We've actually been able to meet like a number of you this summer being out and about. So keep coming up to us and saying hi if you see us out. And I got a DM today that was so sweet. And someone asked, is Angel okay? She's been gone, and I can reassure you that I'm okay. I just want to talk about why I haven't been as present on here as usual. So #1, as most of you know, or some of you know, I started a new job 4-ish months ago at this point. And so when I first started, you know, I'm in orientation phase. I was eased in, I would say. I didn't have that much to do. So after a while, I started getting worried. Like, I was excited to start working. I was excited to dive into work. I was excited to just learn something new, because it's a completely, and I'll talk about that in this video, but it's a different client base, different practice, different everything than I was used to. So I was excited to start. So I get kind of anxious, and I started emailing all these people, hey, can you give me some work? Or like anytime I would come across someone that like I would look at their bio and they like had an interesting practice or interesting clients, I'd be like, set up a Zoom with them, like, hey, give me some work, give me some work. All of it came to me at the same time. Literally, I went from not having much to do to boom, I got hit with a ton of work. And I was consumed by work. So that's kind of why I haven't been posting as much. On top of that, Sam has been traveling. If you watch her personal vlog channel, and she's kind of posted on here that she was on vacation. She was in Jamaica, working from Jamaica. She was in Dubai on PTO and all type of stuff. There are a few reasons why I wasn't there, but a part of it is that I'm saving for something pretty big, and I've been recording it. Y'all will see in a few months, but that's part of why I haven't been like traveling as much with her. So that kind of added to why I was a little bit absent. And then on top of that, the last couple weekends, we've had friends that came up to DC to visit us for like 4th of July weekend. Our friend David passed the Georgia Bar, and he had a big celebration in Atlanta last weekend. So we just had weekends full of events. And usually when I shoot videos, it's either like pretty early in the morning or on weekends. And early in the mornings I was working because I had so much work to do. And on weekends I was like outside turning up. So I've been freed from the shackles of turning up. I've been freed from the shackles of being overly consumed by work. So now I can finally let y'all know like what I think, my first reaction. So let's go. I think that this video will actually be better now that I've had time to get out of the honeymoon phase. Like, you know, when you first start a new job and everything's new and different, everything's great. And so now it's been 4 months, so not a long time, but hasn't been a month or 2 months like when I originally planned on shooting this. So I think I've had enough time to be a little bit more objective. So I wrote down a couple of things that I wanted to make sure I hit on that are different, but for the most part I'm just gonna be off the dome because I didn't write down everything. I want to make sure I hit a few things. I'm gonna just pull this up. Okay, so now at my new firm, I am in the emerging companies / venture capital group. That's really a generalist group, but for a very specific client base. So a lot of my companies, a lot of my clients that I'm working for, some of them are literally a company of 2 people, and then some of them are like late stage growth companies. They have investment bankers, they have a legal team. Like, I have a way more of a spectrum of a practice now in terms of who I'm serving, which is definitely a positive. And there's a lot to that. So I asked to be in the emerging companies group. I wanted to do emerging companies work, and one of the first matters I got put on, I want to say the mid-level or the senior introduced me to the client on the thread, put my LinkedIn bio. I was like, oh, the client actually wants to know who I am. That is so different. So number one difference I've noticed, and this is, let me take a backtrack. I don't know how to put it. This is kind of, this might be specific to the practice group I'm in at my new firm, because some people have those large practices where they represent really large companies, and you know, those things where it might actually be similar to what I was practicing before, which is very regimented. Everyone on all sides of the deal has done it 200 times. So in my opinion, kind of robotic, but you know, not everyone sees it that way. Some people really like the structure, they like the predictability, things like that. There are people I knew from that have those practices and that like that or whatever. I'm not in those groups and not everyone does. So for emerging companies work, so far for me, it hasn't really been like that. Some of the bigger later stage companies are more regimented because they have done this a lot of times. Like, they have a legal team, they have whatever. So yeah, so one of my first impressions when they sent my LinkedIn bio and like the client was like, oh, welcome Angel to the team, I was like, oh, okay, this feels good. So that's one of the first things I noticed, is that for some of those smaller companies, like they care who's on the team. Another thing about them is that they're not lawyers. Some of the people that we're talking to, they're founders, they're CEOs, they're new to this. They've never done this before. They have no idea what the SEC rules really entail. They don't understand why they have to follow them. They don't understand how an M&A process works. They don't understand how a venture capital deal works. So that has been great for me, because that means that the calls that you have with the client, with everyone's speaking in the most basic terms. And for someone who's never done this kind of work before, it's pretty easy to follow along. Like, there's not a lot of unnecessary legalese going on if you're explaining to the founder, like, hey, this is why you have to have a board consent for this stock option plan. I'm making something up. But I'm like, oh yeah, as the person, the mid-level or senior, whoever's explaining to the client, I'm like taking notes like, oh, okay, like that's how this works. I like that I'm not necessarily dealing with lawyers all day. Lawyers are cool, but like they can be kind of dry. It just adds like a different flavor and a different speed to the practice, which is cool. Another thing that I like more about being like in an emerging company, small like growth company, having that kind of practice, or at least having that included in my practice in terms of like only huge companies or only investment banks or things like that. There can be a sense of, I don't know how to put this, but maybe I'll just give examples and maybe the words will come to me. Sometimes in our practice, we always represent the company. Even if the company is one person, like the entity, that company entity is still the client. Even for the pro bono work I do, the nonprofit is the client, or the LLC, whatever it is, the small company is the client and not the person. That's a line that's very easy to draw when the company's huge. But when a company's small and they're in their founding stages, and so far all the funding that the company has gotten is from family and friends, they have personal ties that they're trying to uphold. The goal really isn't to get over on a fellow founder or like a family member or whatever. Like the goal is, yeah, we want to do what's right for the company, but we want to make sure so-and-so is as well off after this deal is over as possible. So I've been in several situations like that where like the company founder or CEO will explicitly say, we want this agreement to be as favorable to this employee as possible. To just bring those values and, you know, that like sense of loyalty to a capitalistic space is just, I hadn't seen that before. So I thought it's been pretty cool to see that. Some of these small companies, they're trying to come up, but they're also trying to like look out for their people that came up with them. And that just added a sense of humanity to my practice that I felt like I was missing. So that was nice. Another thing is that being in this kind of practice group, you're sort of a generalist. Anything that pops up with that company, you're on the team for. So it's not transactions based, it's more client based. So for example, like if I have a client and they want to do a venture capital financing, if I'm on that client team, I'm gonna be the person doing it. If they want to acquire another company, I'm the one on the M&A team. If they're getting acquired by a company, I'm the one on that team, which has given me the opportunity to do a lot more drafting, which is something I've said in some previous video about, like, that's an experience I really wanted to get. I've got plenty of it, especially on the M&A side. With these companies, sometimes you're making things up as you go because so many things have never been done before. Small companies are not really thinking to follow every single rule step by step. Like, they're just trying to get their feet off the ground. So sometimes maybe something wasn't done like exact right way, and we're kind of retroactively like improving things, drafting an agreement that probably should have been there in the beginning that wasn't. So there's been a lot of opportunities for me to come up with something, and then of course it gets checked, but sometimes they're like, okay, that looks good. Here are a few comments and it can go. And I'm like, oh my God, y'all trust my work? Okay. I don't know if that's a product of it being like a generalist practice, or it's a product of just kind of clients and that they are not necessarily going to draw on the lines all the time because they don't have the funds for that. Like, they don't have the legal expertise to know like the steps that they're supposed to take. So that goes back to my previous point of things just being a little less regimented, a little less rigid, and more flexible, doing a lot of what they call corporate cleanup of, yeah, the client didn't do this or this right a couple years ago, or the client was like, didn't have a lot of money, so they had cheap counsel. Counsel didn't do everything right. We're coming in and like helping out, cleaning things up. I don't know, kind of cool. Kind of cool to me at least. Okay, another thing that I noticed, this is less about the job and more about me. One of the benefits of working at my first job and having that experience working with a bunch of different kind of people I really learned to suss out whether someone's working style works with me or not. So that's been really valuable here because I can easily spot the beginning of a deal or the beginning of a matter. This is someone that I should keep trying to get work from. Like I'm gonna ask them next time, like if they have something for me, because we're like aligned, we communicate the same way, we work the same way, like things are good. And then I've also been able to notice the opposite of like, we don't really work the same way, or like, this isn't really working, and like being able to make a mental note. So that's helpful as well to know like, okay, this person, we don't click as well as I did with that person. So now I know for the future, like, okay, I'm gonna work with so-and-so because they're the person I'm more aligned with. They give good feedback, especially right now in a time when being new to something, it's been really important for me to find people that can take a step back and teach me how to do something, or like very receptive to questions. Everyone's not like that, and hey, everybody has a different personality. I've noticed that I'm better at kind of spotting like, okay, this works, this working dynamic works, and this other dynamic doesn't. Another thing I noticed, not positive or negative, but you know, whatever. My firm, the clients are very tech heavy. Like there are a lot of tech companies that we represent, and tech space is like pretty, I would say is younger on average than not non-tech space, but like the older institutional, I mean, tech is still an institution. I don't know how to phrase it, but I would say the tech space is a little bit younger than average. So I noticed that a lot of the clients that I work with are younger than the clients that I was working with before. There have been a few clients that I had recently that were in their early 30s, like that, and the founder or the CEO in their early 30s, and that was just not the case in my old firm. The tech space is also very, very white, very, very white male. So that has been a difference. It's a tech is a very, very, very white space, and I don't know if that's changing. I don't know, like, I don't know. I have to include that too. Another thing that I've noticed that's different about my practice now versus before is that when you're working on these smaller, and a lot of things I'm talking about are like the medium-sized to smaller companies. That's most of what I've done. I've done a few of the bigger companies, and honestly, the bigger companies I work with, it's a little bit more like my old practice. Like people have done it a lot. The teams are big, but for the mid-sized and smaller companies, I also noticed that I get CC'd on everything, and some people feel like positive or negative about that. I like it because it makes it less likely that something that takes hours gets sprung on me. Sometimes on those larger teams as a junior, not CC'd on everything. There's a bunch of different work streams going on, and there's still a lot of work streams going on when they're smaller too. But there are like even more work streams going on sometimes. You're just not on everything, but sometimes it's something they want a junior to do. It feels sometimes like out of nowhere, like, wait, what's the thing you want me to do that's gonna take 15 hours? And I had no idea this work stream was going on. This is like, okay, when am I gonna do this? When am I gonna budget time for it? I don't know if that's actually ever happened to me with like my true emerging companies clients, like the smaller or mid-sized companies, just because I'm on everything, like the counselor or partner or mid-level, whoever's running it, like CC me on everything. So I'm always in the know. So things are not sprung onto me as often, if at all. I don't want to say it's never happened, because like I kind of can't remember. Another thing I've noticed is that with that client-based structure, it's not really as feasible, I would say, to be extremely hierarchical. It's a client team, so anytime something pops up with that client, you're responsible for it. And sometimes things are gonna pop up when it's like, I literally have no time. The mid-level has to do it, mid-level has to have time, I have to do it. Or there's just so many small moving pieces that you just kind of have to divvy it up. You can't be as, this is like the word of the video, but you can't be as rigid with like who does what, because things just kind of have to get done, and you have to like kind of play tag team on who can do it. So I've noticed that when I first started, I was like really, really shocked about some of the matters that mid-levels or seniors were handling. I was like, oh, they're not just, oh, like, oh, okay. Like the council is sending out the calendar invite. It was like confusing to me. I'm just used to like automatically doing all of those things. And sometimes with these small company clients, that's just not the case. It's not as clear cut. I offer to do those things, and like I'm used to doing those things, and I can handle those things. But it's just a situation where it's all hands on deck and matters are just divvied up accordingly. I don't want to overstate that, because usually, yes, the junior is still doing like the more administrative stuff, or taking the first draft at things, or taking the first pass at comments, but it's not as 100% in my practice now as it was before, just because it's really just not as it's not as feasible. There are more clients and the quantity is higher. There are more things going on, and just you just really can't dump it all on one person. Overall, I feel very, I guess, happy with the direction that I'm moving in. Like, this position for me has been clearly a better fit than my last one. And I'm not gonna act like everything that I mentioned in like my I quit blah 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 video doesn't happen. Like, I still work a lot. You know, I still be pulling, like, I couldn't even shoot videos, so I still work a lot. There's still like sometimes things that happen I don't like. It's the nature of having a job. But overall, I feel just a lot better. I feel a lot better about where I'm at, what I'm doing, than I did before. And I just think that it's gonna keep getting better as I keep finding things that interest me and keep exploring. Last thing, I hope y'all like the new name, Sisters-in-Law. That'll be our name going forward. We also have merch coming out, which we're super excited about. We've been testing all these different colors and testing like our different phrases that we want to include on our merch, and we're so excited about it. We're seriously talking about having like a vendor pop-up shop / meet and greet here in DC. We have so many people a part of our family here in DC. We would love to meet you guys. And thank you for people who see us and come up to us and say hi. That always makes my day. Like, literally always makes my day. Just met someone last weekend in Atlanta, and it was heartwarming it's always heartwarming to meet you guys in person. So if you see us, don't be shy, come say hello. Stay tuned for more merch details. Enjoy our new name and just like the new things that we have coming out. I have a day in the life that I shot weeks ago, probably like a month ago at this point, that I will be editing and uploading soon. Thank y'all for rocking with us. Let us know what content you want to see, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.